Now, our next story is about a doctor whose name is familiar to Africans. Dr. James Orbinski is the former president of Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders, professionals who travel the world on humanitarian missions. Triage is a documentary highlighting Dr. Orbinski's experiences during the Rwandan genocide and Somalia's famine. A word of warning, some of the scenes you're about to see are disturbing. VOA's Carolyn Turner has more.
Triage, Dr. James Orbinski's humanitarian dilemma, follows the Canadian doctor as he returns to Africa to write a book about his life in the field. The film explores the conflict faced by relief workers who must appear to be politically neutral, but cannot perform work without a military escort. Dr. Orbinski recalls the time in Badoa when his group provided medical care for over 150,000 people.
There were displaced people literally everywhere. Just imagine thin-boned people walking down the street with whatever they have left, 1 or 2 children, too weak to move, that were hungry, that were sick, that were dying literally on the streets. They were sitting silently, waiting for food. And that's what I remember the most, is the silence. Children were so weak that they couldn't even lift a spoon to their mouth.
Patrick Reed directed Triage. He says going back to Somalia was dangerous.
When we went to Somalia, there was active fighting throughout the country. The civil war was still going on. The borders were closed.
During the Civil War, relief workers were forced to cooperate with warlords who sometimes stole the food. Dr. Orbinski says Somalia has the highest mortality rate recorded in any disaster.
There is no question this was the city of death. This was the epicenter of the famine. 40% of the adults were dead. 70% of the kids were dead, children under 5.
Dr. Orbinski relived nightmarish moments when he visited the hospital.
I came here one day in 1992 with a little girl, a 4-year-old girl, who had been shot outside our compound. But I remember coming into this room with this 4-year-old girl and trying to put a chest tube in her. And 3 men came in with guns, and they had another man who had been shot. And they insisted that I treat the man who was shot. Before the little girl, while I was treating the little girl. There are risks, there's no question about that. And yes, I've taken them. As a humanitarian doctor, that is inherent to that kind of work. Dr. Ricardo was killed in exactly the same hospital, doing work that I have done. There's no question, it could have been me.
One gratifying moment happened during Dr. Orbinski's visit to the displaced persons camp. He was recognized by someone he treated years ago.
It was quite a moment to actually have a kind of a physical confirmation that what I had done years earlier was the right thing. And in doing that, you create the possibility of something better. But without that, you create death by not acting. In Badoa alone, we counted 80,000 people that we had helped and whose lives continued because of what we were doing.
By 1993, food aid was going to Somalia from the United Nations and the United States, but things ended badly in Mogadishu with the Black Hawk Down incident. Diplomatic and military leaders pulled out, and anarchy ensued. But in spite of the risks, Dr. Orbinski and film director Patrick Reed say the trip was worth it. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.